If you can create value at the speed of need, that's how you show relevance. So whether you're a small business, large, doesn't matter the size. The ability to show value at the speed of need for a sustained amount of time affords you relevance, which over time hopefully allows you to gain trust. Now, the reason why companies are struggling to deliver value at the speed of need, for example, if you don't have order online curbside pickup, if you don't have contactless payments, if you don't have those are things that will potentially disqualify you as example technology. You have to be designed for movement in order to reach optimal speed. What businesses, because they had a blind spot in terms of the impact and the power of decentralization, is that they didn't design for speed. I don't look like an athlete, but there was a time where I did compete, at the varsity level and so on and so forth. And I think about 4x100 elite runners, 4x100 elite runners. The first leg of the race is usually 1 to 1.5 seconds slower than the second, third, and fourth. 1.5 second at elite level is the difference between first and dead last in any competition. The reason is the runner starts at a static position, whereas the second, third, and fourth, they're in motion before the baton is handed to them.
Right.
So how do you create that motion in business?
Okay, before we get into this episode with Vala, which is incredible by the way, I want to lay down a little bit of foundation and give you some context about who Salesforce is, or rather, what Salesforce is. Salesforce was founded by Marc Benioff, who is, I think, valued at like $8 billion. He recently bought Time Magazine, and he totally revolutionized the SaaS, software as a service business and industry. Benioff grew up in the San Francisco area, but he's kind of an anomaly when it comes to these Silicon Valley CEOs. He's not your average dude. He got his first job at a jewelry store and got fired because as he was washing the floors, he used the wrong soap. While he was in high school, he sold his first app called How to Juggle, and he used it to buy his first computer. By the very next year, he was making about $1,500 a month and had enough to start saving for tuition at USC, where he eventually went to school. While he's at USC, Benioff took the summer off to do an internship at Apple, and yet, you guess it, worked with Steve Jobs. And he really credits Steve Jobs for giving him the inspiration to be able to jump out and become the entrepreneur that he has become. Benioff was planning to stay in programming, but one of his professors at USC suggested he might also be good at business, so he took a job at Oracle. Rising through the ranks quickly, Benioff became one of the youngest VPs at Oracle at age 23. At age 25, the Oracle salary made Benioff a millionaire. This caught the attention of Oracle founder Larry Ellison, and the two became very close friends. After 13 years of crushing it at Oracle, Benioff took some time off and vacationed in Hawaii. And he actually came up with the idea for Salesforce while swimming with dolphins. The big idea at Salesforce was there's going to be no software, at least not on the servers. It was all going to be in the cloud. This was a very radical idea at the time. Ellison was supportive of Benioff and gave him a couple $1 million to help launch the company. But they had a falling out when Benioff found out that Ellison was creating a competitive product, and the rest is history. Salesforce survived the dot-com bust and continued to grow, making it one of the first and biggest companies in cloud computing. Now let's get into the episode with Vala. Here we go.
Hi, my name is Vala Afshar. I'm the Chief Digital Evangelist at Salesforce, and you're watching Behind the Brand with Bryan Elliott.
I usually ask my guests, how'd you get this job?
Luck. And perhaps subconsciously interviewing for over a decade. My company and I chose Salesforce to be our CRM solution in 2003. Now, the company was founded March 8th, 1999. So 2003, they were only 4 years old, a few hundred employees. I'm based in Boston, they're in San Francisco, so they're not even in my backyard. But as part of the due diligence, and I was tasked to run services at that time, and I'm completely new to the world of service, which means I don't even know what a CRM is. But quickly I realized there is a tool to help support organizations manage relationships with their clients. And as part of the due diligence of interviewing a bunch of companies, most of them bigger than Salesforce, I felt that the ethos of the company, their culture, their core values, was very much like my company, a blue-collar mentality, obsessed about learning more about our customers.
Well, wait, so give us the context again. What year is this?
This is 2003.
Okay.
So, sorry, long answer to your question. So 12 years I was a customer of Salesforce from 2003 to 2015. And my company, tripled in size in terms of revenue. We were named the 4th best place to work in Boston out of 1,600 companies, Boston Globe, the main paper in our city. And so people were asking me, why is your company growing and doing well? And the more I thought about it, the more I felt it was because we had put CRM at the center of gravity of our business, which helped us learn as much as we could about our customers. And so I ended up writing a book about the power of Salesforce and being a social business, highly collaborative. And I ended up being asked to expand on the book. The book did well. So I wrote articles for Inc., I wrote articles for Huffington Post, I wrote articles for several publications. And in 2015, 5 years ago, the president of products reached out and said, you keep writing about us and you're sharing our story as a 12-year customer. Perhaps you can think about joining us and helping all our other customers share their stories, their lessons learned, their mistakes, their successes. So he offered me the opportunity to be the first evangelist at Salesforce. So I'm the chief digital evangelist at Salesforce, and that's how I got the job. So when I say luck and perseverance and a little bit of hard work, it's because I think for 12 years I was maybe subconsciously interviewing for the role. Mm-hmm. And then when the opportunity was available, I jumped on it. And it's a dream job. It's just a dream job.
Okay, so let me break this down for everyone who's watching and maybe didn't catch it. It's very subtle. Here's how you get your dream job working for one of the biggest and most successful companies on the planet. All you got to do is write a successful book about them, wait about a decade, be their client, and then wait for someone on their team to find you and offer you the job of a lifetime. There it is.
You have brilliantly captured the statement, overnight success takes years. So prepare for the decisions you made 5 to 10 years ago is where you are now. And the decisions you make now is where you'll be 5 to 10 years from now. So I think the advice I can give to my younger self is that it's okay to look in the past, just don't stare. Mm-hmm. There's a lot to learn. Our best teachers are our last mistake. But be forward-looking and be patient. Things don't. Those doors don't open, and there's no silver plate with dream job opportunities. Someone knocking on your door daily. So be patient and work hard. There's no substitution for hard work.
Yeah, a couple more lessons that I'm seeing. Maybe it's obvious, maybe it's not, but it's this idea that you never know who's paying attention to your work, right? And the other thing
this shows a perfect example.
Yeah.
You reached out to me. I'm not really sure how I got on your radar, but the fact is, we're now connected, hopefully friends. Our paths will hopefully cross more in the future. But this is an example of what you just said.
Yeah, and because you don't know who's paying attention, you shouldn't underestimate the opportunities that could come your way. The other thing that strikes me is you weren't actively. It wasn't like a quid pro quo. You didn't write that book in order to get hired. Maybe you had this secret dream to work there someday, or Marc Benioff would be reading your book or something. Who knows? But you weren't holding your breath, and you weren't holding your hands out either to say, here, I wrote this book, now I should be rewarded with a job. You were still doing your thing.
Salesforce is my second job out of grad school. So I was with my prior company for 20 years. So definitely not active in terms of pursuing next chapter. I left grad school, started there as an intern, and I left as chief marketing officer. And prior to that, I was chief customer officer running our global service operations. And prior to that, I was vice president of engineering. So the 20 years, I stayed because I was an entrepreneur inside of an enterprise, given opportunities to do things where, I had no business being a CMO. I had zero experience in marketing. But with the book, with the articles, with the active social footprint, when our CMO left our company and we hired an organization to help us recruit the next CMO, after a couple of weeks of due diligence, they went to my CEO and said, this guy you have running services is pretty active and he's he's got a decent brand, so why don't you just make him CMO? So the moral of the story is absolutely I wasn't looking for the, again, maybe subconsciously I was, I don't know, but it is only my second job ever. So I'm not, a person that jumps. If I trust and respect and care about the people I work with, so if I love the people I work with and I love the work I do, to me it feels like play. It doesn't feel like work. Yeah. Right now I feel, like an athlete in a flow state on a court. It's just pure joy. And I've been here 5 years, and I don't know, maybe I'll stay 20. I hope so. I have my fingers crossed. But it's and the comment you made is again brilliant. In a hyper-connected knowledge-sharing economy, in a digital economy, you are being watched. You are being watched. When I advise students, so I'm in Boston, so there's all these obviously colleges, universities, and part of what I do in terms of volunteering my time for the community is to adopt schools and speak to institutions and students. I just think there's a significant gap in what we're teaching students and what businesses expect from them when they're ready to work. But the one thing I tell students when I'm in front of them is Google yourself and ask this: would I hire me? What's the first photo that pops up, the video, right, the comment? How many times are you hashtag failing a brand because you have to wait an extra minute? Because your personal brand right now is your digital footprint plus your digital exhaust, those unintended consequences of things you leave behind. So what I feel bad, not just students, I see senior leaders every day, in my opinion, tarnishing their brand because they don't chew on their words before they spit them out. Yeah. That their personal brand, and your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. Right. And it just turns out the room is the web. So if you want to have a good, healthy career, please recognize that it is your digital footprint and your digital exhaust, and more people than you could ever imagine are watching what you're doing. And in fact, digital native companies are using, machine learning powered human capital management software, HR software, human resources software. I don't want to use acronyms to understand cultural fit. They understand your tone and sentiment. They know if you're a giver or a taker. Trust me, it's your competence and your character will define your career, and lots and lots of people are watching.
Yes, thank you for putting a stamp on that, co-signing that for me. I appreciate that because it is so true. And so let's dig into a little bit more. I would call it strategic transparency. So like you want to show people what you want to show them, and you don't want to show them, if you're raw or unfiltered, that stuff maybe is better left for a personal one-on-one conversation off the internet. Because let's face it, we're all humans, and we have bad days, but strategic transparency is a thing. And so how do you do it as, let's just call you as one of the voices for a big brand? Do you have a set of best practices, or do you have like a Bible that you work from? Like, how do you do this? And the other leading question is, how do you advise other people do it?
Sure. So I'm a first-gen immigrant, refugee. My family and I had to abruptly leave my birth country, Iran, because there was a civil unrest and then immediately a war with an adjacent country. So we had family and friends who were unfortunately no longer with us as a result of all this. So we abruptly left. So so my mentality as a refugee, and then maybe my teachers, maybe my managers, my parents, I'm not really sure who to give this attribution to, but I had this silo mentality, which meant I felt consuming resources, protecting those resources, and extracting as much value from those resources was key to survival and growth and influence, and like your lifeblood of your career or your company. By the way, most companies have silo mentalities right now. I would say 99 out of 100. meaning they consume and they protect and try to extract value. Only the exceptional ones have different mindset. So in my first 40 years, I did just that. Go to school, study electrical engineering, learn as much as I can, become an expert in certain areas. I don't like using the word expert, but back then I thought I was, a deep understanding of certain things. Started my career, promoted repetitively, frequently. So hundreds of people work in my team. I have millions of dollars of budget. I have CXO title, Chief Customer, Chief Marketing. So the first 40 years, I have this mentality, only to realize that the lifeblood of your career and what brings you joy and what helps you grow, sustainable growth, is not consumption of resources, but flow, movement of resources. So my first tweet was at age 41. I wrote my book at 42. My first podcast was 44. I started writing articles for major US publications at 43, 44 after the book. So this flow of knowledge, which means a commitment and understanding that networking is about giving, that when you learn something, teach. That didn't happen. I consumed it and I kept it to myself. Now, again, inside a company, it served me well. On paper, you would think, this guy's doing okay. But upon reflection, and I would not be, the chief storyteller at Salesforce if I didn't shift my mindset from silo to growth. And I think about companies that are growing, are emulating living organisms. We are, we have our lungs that bring oxygen into our system. We have our heart that pumps blood. We have our arteries and veins. So our circulatory system is how we live and grow. Any failure in your pulmonary, cardiovascular, or systemic, your lungs, your heart, and your arteries and veins, and you die. Mm-hmm. The reason I think Salesforce is successful is we've built the most intelligent circulatory system for business. Because when I think about pumps like lungs and heart, these are like departments: sales, service, marketing, commerce, IT. We capture knowledge and information, we analyze it, we hopefully disseminate what we think is the most healthy insights we can for our ecosystem and stakeholders to be successful. Our bodies have filters to get rid of waste. We invest so much in emerging technologies like AI to improve the signal to noise ratio to make sure only goodness gets to the right person at the right time on the right channel. So the companies that most emulated a living organism, and we as individuals need water, oxygen, food to sustain. So we need an enriching environment. When I think of a company like mine, with the ecosystem we have with our, we have the most active corporate venture capital arm. So we have insights into all the startups. In fact, we invest in a new startup once a week. We have a learning platform. 3 million people are learning about what we do for free, online, gamified, we call it Trailhead. Our philanthropic model. There's all these things we do that has created an enriching environment for our company where there's flow of new talent, new ideas, new innovation opportunities. So to answer, your question in terms of, first you have to have a mindset that values the power of movement. And so when you become a source of knowledge over time, if you can gain that trust, that should be your North Star. Mm-hmm. Am I building a trustworthy reputation and brand, and we all have 5-10 different people in the room. They'll probably get 10 different definitions of trust. My favorite definition of trust is from the lecturer Rachel Botsman at Oxford. She wrote a book, Who Can You Trust? But she said trust is competence plus character. And she said competence is capability and reliability. So you can be reliable, but if you're not capable, it's not. And if you could be capable but not reliable, you miss that full competence part of the equation. Character, she said, was integrity plus benevolence. And I love the word benevolence. Your intention. What is your intent for what you do? You have good intentions. So you and I are power social media users, meaning we can quickly sniff a person's intention. Are they trying to sell me a product? Are they trying to sell their point of view? Are they, so with one or two thumb scrolls on my phone, and I can get a sense of the person's benevolence. So my advice to you in terms of be who you are, but recognize that if you want to build a trustworthy, healthy relationship, You need to demonstrate reliability, capability, integrity, and benevolence. And if you fail on any one of those four, you're probably not going to reach your full potential on a digital platform, or frankly in life. I don't even know why I'm making a distinction in terms of social. I'm not smart enough to be a different person online versus offline. I'm just not. I couldn't do it. I couldn't juggle. So you have to. And you talked about strategic transparency, but I think it's really there is a fine line between inspiring and manipulating, and that line is defined by your intentions. So you have to always be mindful of why is it that you're sharing what you're sharing. And so again, there is radical transparency and trustworthiness, and there isn't a recipe book I guess that I can speak to, but those are things I think about.
Can I ask a different question? Maybe it's the same question, only different, which is, why do we silo? What are the benefits of siloing, and why do you think people do it, or companies do it? Are they afraid that their ideas are going to get stolen? Are they insecure about their abilities and think, it's like this imposter syndrome? As soon as I, go outside of my silo, people are going to realize that I'm not all that I say that I am. What is it?
Yeah, I think it's all of those. I struggle with imposter syndrome, but I reminded myself you have to have some level of success in order for you to have imposter syndrome. And I also think that it's good to, continuously reflect on what you're thinking about, what you're saying, and then most importantly, your actions. I think the silo mentality has been with us since the beginning of mankind. I just think that when you think about how our industries are organized today, education, healthcare, government, retail, manufacturing, again, I think most companies have not adopted design thinking principles based on flow. I think most companies need to recognize that the experience that they provide to their stakeholders is as important as the product that they produce. Inherently, we're not comfortable with change. It's super hard to maintain a beginner's mindset. I have kids. My youngest is 10 years old, so he demonstrates to me a beginner's mindset every day because he asks questions. He's free of prejudice. He's curious. He's hungry. Why? He's trying to peel the layers of the onion, as Shrek famously said. Those of you who have kids would understand the Shrek reference, I think. But it's and at the same time, I think we still continue to struggle with creating a culture where you have permission to break things. I think it was Seth Godin who said, people are not afraid of failure; they're afraid of blame. There's a lot of pressure on business leaders today. I don't care what age you're in, whether you're starting in your career in your 20s or your 30s or 40s or 50s, especially now, especially this year. We're all struggling, some more than others. To a tune of 177,000 deaths since March. I think our first death in the U.S. was recorded March 2nd. So you're looking at every 60 seconds we're losing someone. There are people watching this show that may be affected by the end of this year. The rate is horrific. So there's a health crisis, an economic crisis. All of us have friends and family that have lost jobs. The numbers are mind-numbing. A racial crisis, which is, again, in this hyper-connected knowledge-sharing economy, we're literally watching videos of people getting murdered. There's a health crisis. California is burning. 12,000 lightning strikes in 3 days. 2 of the largest fires in the history of the state happening simultaneously. There's a lack of leadership and misinformation crisis. So all of this means there's a trust deficit. And that's why I say, when you're on social, you're in real life, whatever you're doing to live a recommendable life, you have to recognize that trustworthiness has to be your North Star, because frankly, there is a trust deficit, and it's hurting us as individuals, as companies, and as society.
Yeah, and I also say it's an opportunity, right? With a lot of darkness out there, you can be this star, this little light in the darkness, and even if it doesn't produce that much light, enough of this light together, the sum is greater than the individual parts. You can actually make a difference, right? By having a positive attitude and looking for the good and trying to, I want to ask, what are the opportunities with everything that's coming unhinged and unraveled right now? There's a lot of people who are confused. To me, it feels a lot like 2008, very similar. And it's like it was yesterday for me, because that's when I started this company. I had a big job at the studios. I was working at Universal Pictures. I had a $40 million P&L. I had a team. I was walking the red carpet. I worked on the original Shrek #1.
I didn't know that. I made that reference complete. One of my favorite movies. So.
Yeah. Well, Universal was distributing DreamWorks at the time, so we were very much partnered with them, helping. And I was in home entertainment, so I was helping to sell the movie on DVD. So it was very much a CPG, consumer packaged goods style of model. In any case, I didn't see it coming.
Right.
Whatever metaphor you want to use, the perfect storm, the rug got pulled out from under me. I mean, it all happened at once. And so it feels very similar. And yet, at that time, somehow I was able to rally and stay positive and find the white space. And that's how we survived. We, like a phoenix out of the ashes, we rose up, and it actually happened to be because we were so small and nimble as a production company. Small and nimble are synonyms for willing to work cheap and do anything to survive. That's right. It helped us gain a reputation, and although our margins were small, we did a lot of those little margin jobs, enough to keep us afloat, and then sort of on a good trajectory heading into the future. So where's the white space right now that you see, and how can for someone who actually supports small business owners as well as enterprise, but what are the opportunities you're seeing right now in the midst of chaos?
Sure, that's a great question. By the way, you have an excellent way of summarizing my rambling into tweetable words of wisdom. That I can see why you're great at what you do. So businesses had, I think maybe the biggest blind spot was the de-emphasis or undervaluing the power of decentralization. As society, we gathered in places to do our jobs, and a light switch turned on in March, and we went from pure centralized to purely distributed, decentralized, digital only. So we've been talking about digital transformation and using cloud and mobile and social and all these analytics and AI and immersive, augmented and virtual reality to advance our capabilities. And there was a forcing function. So one lesson this year is every business, every company needs to be a digital business. So you have to build that muscle, and that you have to understand the impact of technology to transform your company. Now, culture, talent, process, those three, in my opinion, are more important in terms of success factors, but you can't ignore technology anymore. And I believe we've probably witnessed somewhere between 5 to 10 years of digital and cultural transformation since March. McKinsey will show a 10-year adoption of e-commerce in the last 3-4 months. We'll end the year at 33 to 40% of commerce digital. In 2019, we were at 15-16%. So literally doubled in this year alone. And of course, the forcing function was pandemic. So the decentralization was a blind spot. So regardless of business, size or sector, you have to recognize technologies like contactless payments and technologies like e-commerce, order online, pick up curbside. These are things that are going to be permanently part of us moving forward. Because pre-pandemic, when you looked at discretionary spend, you had your essential and then non-essential. So the only barrier for spend on discretionary for non-essential was irrelevant to you in your life. You're a runner, you buy sneakers. You like to fish, you buy a new rod, whatever it may be. Was it relevant? That was the only barrier. Since the pandemic, when it comes to non-discretionary spend, or even discretionary, I would argue, there's two additional barriers. There's safety, and there is accessibility. So I went to my favorite restaurant a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month or so ago, and I didn't see all the employees wearing masks. So I'm not going there until down the road. Down the road, maybe never, maybe 3 years from now, until there's vaccine, millions of tests per day, and automated contact tracing, because you have to identify, isolate, contact trace at scale, and we're not doing any of that in the US, not even close. So, the research and the experts that I collaborate with believe this could be a 2024 exit in terms of safety at scale. So safety is now a barrier on top of relevance, and then accessibility. I can't go to the Celtics game, and my son and I probably went to 24 games because it's not accessible, or movie theaters, or certain businesses. So the reason why technology comes into play is that discretionary spend is declining and will continue to decline because of the economic impact. And when you do have an opportunity to spend, you now have 3 filters: relevance, safety, and accessibility, which means without use of technology, you will fail the last 2 barriers. Advice to business owners is to understand these seismic changes in terms of digital and cultural transformation. We also have learned from some of us, not all, that work is not a place. You should be able to work from anywhere. Mm-hmm. And the reason why that's important is because when you are fighting for the hard-earned dollars of folks that want to, pick a brand that they trust and respect because it's met the barriers that they've defined, you have to be able to show relevance. And if you can't show relevance, you can't earn their trust. But you have to show relevance at the speed of need. So speed comes into play. If you can create value at the speed of need, that's how you show relevance. So whether you're a small business, large, doesn't matter the size. The ability to show value at the speed of need for a sustained amount of time affords you relevance, which over time hopefully allows you to gain trust. Now, the reason why companies are struggling to deliver value at the speed of need, for example, if you don't have order online curbside pickup, if you don't have contactless payments, if you don't have those are things that will potentially disqualify you as example technology. You have to be designed for movement in order to reach optimal speed. What businesses, because they had a blind spot in terms of the impact and the power of decentralization, is that they didn't design for speed. I don't look like an athlete, but there was a time where I did compete, at the varsity level and so on and so forth. But I think about 4x100 elite runners, 4x100 elite runners. The first leg of the race is usually 1 to 1.5 seconds slower than the second, third, and fourth. 1.5 second at elite level is the difference between first and dead last in any competition. The reason is the runner starts at a static position, whereas the second, third, and fourth, they're in motion before the baton is handed to them.
Right.
So how do you create that motion in business? How can Salesforce, my company, move 52,000 employees to work from home in literally 48 hours? It's because we're a cloud-first company. There's certain technologies like cloud computing that untethers you from on-premise, VPN, high secure, physical barrier, filter construct, which means you're designed for movement. Ability to have apps on your smartphone. My entire company business, we're nearly a $200 billion market cap company, and we can run sales, service, commerce, IT, HR, any function in our business on our phone. So that's designed for movement. So how do you infuse technology, whether you're a small company or large, in how you work, how you serve your stakeholders? And that is what digital transformation really is ultimately about. And that's the opportunity that exists. If you're investing in technology today, if you're investing in the right talent to bring your company, for talent, I advise you to assess rate of learning and good judgment. Rate of learning and good judgment. We have too much emphasis on experience. The problem with that now is there are no experts about tomorrow. If anybody comes on the show and says, I'm an expert, I'm telling you, Brian, double click on that, because there are things I thought was best practice 2 years ago, and right now I think it's like rubbing sticks together. That's how far behind. So the velocity of innovation, and I use velocity purposeful, it's the speed and direction. Speed and direction is unprecedented. So if you don't have people that are quick study, that are comfortable with the uncomfortable, and they're able to make sound judgments, and I think that's a function of being a quick study, your company can potentially fall behind over time. Right. So in terms of hiring practice, it really emphasizes, and then EQ. I mean, I'm telling you, you hire for attitude, you train for aptitude, more so than ever. All this digital, I'm so sympathetic for my sales colleagues. Can you imagine selling a 6, 7, 8-digit deal and you never broke bread with the customer or prospect, you never had face-to-face meeting, you didn't shake their hand, you didn't look in their eyes. Like, we have 20 senses, active senses. For us to not be able to use our senses that we grew with to read the room, to enhance our contextual intelligence, even as us when we present, like when you're on stage, you can read the room and change your delivery, your cadence. And now for the last 7 months, we're doing this. Like, and we don't have technology to help us assess whether the person has fallen asleep. I have no idea if I lost you 5 minutes ago, or you're still with me.
No, I'm soaking it all up. And this is the hardest part of my job, because sometimes, well, not sometimes, most of the time, I'm going to school right now on what you're saying, and I'm just taking it all in, and then I forget sometimes that I'm conducting, directing, moderating the interview, but it's also good. I wanted you to keep going.
They say brevity. They say brevity is the soul of wisdom. Clearly, I have work to do there. None of my answers are brief. I apologize.
I mean, I see a different way. Maybe it's like, you're opening a fire hose of information, and just, you got to let it flow. And so, a couple things I think you said that I want to underscore a little bit. The companies that are willing to basically evolve and get with the program and move are the ones that are going to have the best advantage. And you're absolutely right, because even if you think the world is not moving as fast as it is moving. So if you are standing still or just hunkered down or trying to weather the storm, you're actually being left behind, because the rest of the world is moving.
Absolutely. Moving
into the next phase or whatever. I hope that this time period really, the one opportunity I see, if I can chime in, is education. My youngest is in 7th grade now, and we are not sending him back to school physically until certain things are put into place, better ventilation and proper social distancing, masked. It's just not realistic to send him back physically right now. So the only option is distance learning. So the district in Southern California where we live has done a good job. It looks like they purchased a new program from someone who already knows what they're doing about homeschooling or distance learning, and that's great. The program is fine, but there's still a lot of room for opportunity, or a lot of room for improvement. And I see this maybe across the board, especially for college campuses. I went to a decent college, but there were certain colleges or certain classes that I couldn't get here and I wanted there. Maybe this is a turning point, at least an opportunity for higher education to really turn a corner and change the status quo, because it's been the same way for a long time. Some of it's good, a lot of it's broken. Most of it doesn't work. Like you said, it's not practical. We're not training college students for what real business looks like. And then we get out here, in our 20s, and we basically have to start from scratch.
Absolutely. I think the higher education will shift from an iOS operating system to an Android. So from a closed OS where you have to get all your 100 plus credits from one institution. And I think by the time my 10-year-old is in college, I think he'll be able to learn from the best chemistry teacher from University A, best writing teacher from University B, and there'll be a network where
it all matriculates.
And they have to do that because, according to the World Economic Forum, if you have a child in middle school right now, 7 out of 10 will work for jobs and titles that don't exist yet. So when I talk about the rate of change, I didn't think chief digital evangelist. I'm a double E, electrical engineer. So if you had told me that I was going to have some storyteller in my title, I would have bet you anything. But let's go back 15 years, or even 10, drone operator, mobile app developer, cloud computing architect, Uber driver, social media manager. I mean, you and I could probably riff on 100 titles that are really in demand right now that did not exist 15 years ago. Zero.
Yeah.
So I am as concerned as you are in terms of the safety for the pandemic, but I'm equally concerned about, are we teaching the right courses, the right content for now it's 7th grade and my 10-year-old middle school. I think there's probably wiggle room, but I also have my daughter is senior in high school this year, and I definitely would have a different curriculum for her. And I didn't publicly speak in my 6 years of college, undergrad and grad. I don't remember presenting to a crowd bigger than my classroom. Mm-hmm. I didn't pay enough attention to writing. I didn't pay. There's how to negotiate. How to just critical thinking, creativity, the art of storytelling. Like all of this stuff was outside of school at 6+ years. So I just think there's significant room for positive disruption in that space. It's going to happen for sure.
So I also like to talk on this show about the F word, fear and failure. And I do it in context because I really think failure is a great teacher, and we can learn from our mistakes. Well, it is a great teacher if we learn from it. If we keep making the same mistake, we do what Einstein said, and it's the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and expecting a different result. So in that context, what professional mistakes have you made along the way that you could impart, maybe a lesson learned, to other people who are building their personal brand or working to build their company?
I made a lot of mistakes as a manager, and I look back at that because I left grad school almost coming out of what I would describe as like a Ranger Marine boot camp. I had a very difficult advisor in grad school. We had, him and I were awarded the largest grant ever for the electrical engineering department at the university. So there was a lot of pressure for us to produce, and it was a grant from Air Force and Lincoln Labs here at Hanscom Air Force Base in Boston. And we were trying to identify electron storms in the ionosphere to improve satellite communication. So it was 3-dimensional tomography of the ionosphere. So we were fed really sensitive satellite data with ground-based receiver information, and there was, again, massive demand. And I did that for 2+ years, and then I went to work. And I was accustomed to deadlines that were in an hour, in next day. So when somebody said this is due and it's due like 2 months from now, I thought I was being punked. I thought this is like they're testing me. Are you kidding me? How can you give me 60 days to do this? I can do this by next Tuesday. And that mentality and that hard work and rigor helped me get promoted to manager, senior manager, director, VP, because I just didn't miss deadlines. But that mentality I expected of my team. And I would compensate for total disregard for quality of life and just having a strong bias to results with promoting, bonusing, paying. So I felt early on in my career, look, if I'm going to give you a big bonus, spot bonus, or if I'm going to promote you, it doesn't matter that you work 60 hours because I'm compensating you. And as a single person, and didn't have kids, so again, achieved tremendous results. But when I look back, I was an asshole, so that was a mistake early on in my career because I just plowed through getting the job done. Biggest failure overall is that nose to the ground for the first 40 years of my career. I ignored speaking at events. I had zero digital footprint when I was 40 years old. If you Googled my name, you'd see my ionospheric tomography thesis. But I wasn't active on any social network. I wasn't writing articles. I wasn't speaking at events. I've written 83 articles just for ZDNet since March. So just to give you like the pivot.
And is that because you didn't feel worthy, or you didn't think you had anything good to say?
Absolutely. An introvert who thought, why would anybody want to listen to what I have to say? I work for a company that nobody knew, even though we had $1 billion in revenue. It wasn't working at Salesforce. I went from a company where I would say the name and nobody knew to everybody knows where I am now. So imposter syndrome, introvert, bias towards getting results. I shared a wall with my boss, who was the CEO for the last 8 years of my career before joining Salesforce, at headquarters. So, and I was there 20 years, so it's like Norm walking into Cheers, and I'm showing my age. Everybody knows. Everybody knew who I was. I can't say I knew everybody. We were a 2,000 employee company, but I knew a lot. I had hired interns that were VPs now under my watch, so it was a family. It was a family. I spent more time with these folks or equal time than my family. So that nose to the ground, get the job done. Again, silo mentality, and instead of movement of resources, capturing and protecting and holding on. That was the biggest. I didn't realize networking was about giving. And so you have to overcome your fear and by the way, grit and persistence. You think that first couple of months or a year on Twitter, like, it was echo on Ghost Town, but my intent, and this is part of being an introvert, I guess, or having imposter syndrome. So I made a conscious decision. I'm not going to follow people just because they follow me. Big mistake in terms of trying to grow your network, because again, people think you're an asshole because you're not following them. But I wanted to make sure my inbound filter, which is a function of the quality of your outbound filter, was such high quality, meaning I only follow accounts that produce multiple digits of good content per day. So when I'm talking to you for an hour and I'm offline, when it's time for me to curate content, because I've been intensely filtering my lists, in seconds I have access to brilliant content from a variety of sources.
Yeah.
But not following people back and forth means I'm losing hundreds, thousands of followers every week. This litmus test helped me, validate that people are following my stream because of the quality of content, not just because. By the way, I'm not giving advice. You follow whoever you want to follow. This isn't a best practice or a considered practice. That's just my insecurity with myself, in that I just want to make sure people are following me because of my content. That's all. Not because I'm a verified account. Not because I got a decent sized network. So anyway, a mistake was I didn't make myself available, and I wasn't teaching enough. I should not have had zero digital footprint at age 40. That was just a big mistake.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think there might be a lot of people that feel like you. I don't, who am I to say anything? Who am I to give opinion?
I still wonder that, by the way.
Well, I think it's fair to say that we've all been born with certain gifts. We've just got to figure out what they are and how they can bring other people value. I want to go back to networking for a second as we sort of wrap things up. You said that networking is about giving. Can you unpack that a little bit more? And then my follow-up question to that is, what do we do if we're with someone who only takes? I think it was Adam Grant who gave that speech about givers and takers. I love that.
Yeah.
The psychology of that.
Right.
What do you do when you feel like you're the guy who's got the pickup truck and the friends only call you when they want help moving? Yeah. And you're like, this is so one-sided.
Yeah, we're all surrounded by both givers and takers. It goes back to the benevolence comment of what are your intentions. I don't care if you retweet or like or share. I'm not active on social looking for compliments. You reach a certain age where you stop chasing compliments. In fact, I think that if you want to live a meaningful life, don't define, you're not your job. I left my job with a big budget, large group, to become a single contributor. And perhaps the first year at Salesforce, my biggest struggle was, there are no meetings? I don't have to present to the board. I don't have to hire, fire, reskill. I had none of those responsibilities. Right. And that was really difficult because, there wasn't a key decision made in my prior company where I wasn't in that room of maybe 4 people deciding what we're going to do next. And so that was tough. So don't define your value and your sense of joy and fulfillment based on your job or your title. Now, it's hard to develop a muscle of giving without expecting a get. We're wired for reciprocity. And that's part of the goodness of humanity, for the possibility of reciprocity. You give to the world, the world gives back.
But at the same time, that becomes a transaction, right? If you do it with the expectation of return.
That's exactly right. In fact, I think yesterday I tweeted, I tweeted because I felt bad I wasn't getting back to a couple of individuals. And what I said was, if you ask someone for help and they don't respond right away or at all, do not have a sense of resentment. Don't be angry. Don't be disappointed. Just move on. The world doesn't owe you a thing. And it's hard because, by the way, right now you and I are probably more accessible, more generous than ever, given the uncertain, difficult times we have. You and I are healthy. You and I are working and have jobs. So I feel like this is the time for us to stretch ourselves and make ourselves available. I have said more yeses in the last 5 months to, from giving keynotes 3 in the morning because my audience is in Finland, to it's just we're fortunate. We're fortunate. This is the time for you to stretch yourself and be giving as much as you possibly can.
Yeah.
Your answer in terms of what do you do in terms of the takers? I think right now, again, you have to be mindful that the takers might really need your help right now. That they may have been consistently takers, but this may be a time where they really need you more than ever. It's a case by case. I'm not responding to everybody who's asking for help. I can't. I have to somehow prioritize. There's sometimes the size is not right-sized. The comments I'll get on LinkedIn is, I just read your article. I'd like to pick your brain for 90 minutes, and perhaps you can connect me to a hiring manager at Salesforce. And I don't know this person at all. Yeah. Zero. So I so badly want to respond. Have you ever written a check from a bank where you didn't make a deposit? You don't do that. You don't ever do that. But I think about, and these are successful working professionals. These are folks that are not right out of school. These are folks that are my age or older. So they're not right sizing the ask. So because you read something, anyway. I don't mean to. So my advice to folks that, and one of the reasons why I didn't use LinkedIn for years, but then I realized that was a mistake because there's ways for you to add value there, is because so often I see the first engagement, not just an ask, but can you write a recommendation for me? And I look the person up because I can't figure out how he knows me and go, 14 years ago, he worked with the same company for a month.
Right.
And you want me to write, and we haven't talked in 14 years.
Right.
How do you, anyway, so be mindful of how you engage with people.
Well, it also sounds like you're saying keep your network warm, stay in touch, stay connected, stay current, stay relevant. I can think of the example, like on my YouTube channel, I get the funniest comments. If you ever want to get depressed or into like a death spiral, just go into the YouTube comments. So I have this long form video with Seth Godin on his book from last year, the year before, This is Marketing. It's a 45-minute masterclass with Seth.
He's amazing. He's amazing.
He is amazing. He's become a friend and has always been a mentor from afar, but we've become personal friends, and I'll go out there and spend time with him. He's terrific and generous. But the comments in the YouTube video are hilarious because, ordinarily, well, first of all, Seth has several programs which you can pay for. They're legit,
sure,
really well done,
sure,
and in Seth fashion, they're scarce and they are valuable, and so they're expensive too. They're not cheap. Yeah. He's not gonna...
His work is extraordinary. Extraordinary.
Yeah. So I'm building to the story, which is you'd have to pay $2,500, $3,500 to take one of his courses, or if you're lucky enough to work at a company that he would give the keynote, like let's say you go. Maybe Salesforce brings him in,
sure,
or Brian Halligan over at HubSpot brings
sure,
him in. You get a ticket to that, or you buy a ticket somewhere else. It's still going to cost you hundreds of dollars.
Fly
easily out there. Anyway, so on YouTube, this guy's complaining that he's got to sit through a 20-second ad, and I'm thinking, dude, bro, like, first of all, you could actually scrub and fast forward past the ad if you really didn't want to watch it. But he's complaining because he has YouTube Premium that's supposed to be ad-free, that he had to watch 20 seconds to get to 45 minutes of the highest quality Seth Godin content you could possibly get.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of feel like, well, in a way I feel like the giving part, the networking part, I do it kind of like the same way when I buy someone a birthday gift. Like, I just buy it for them,
right?
And maybe they don't like it, it doesn't fit, or what, and they return it. But that's not on me, right? Like, my intention, going back to your benevolence idea, that it was my intention to do good. It was my intention to help them feel good, to provide value, to, be that light. And that's enough. And if by circumstance or serendipity or whatever, it comes back, because I think there is sort of a karma aspect to living this great life and doing work that matters and improving the world, being that change you want to see. There's a karma aspect, but not necessarily. You don't always see the return.
Right.
And that's when you can get into troubles, when you have these expectations or unrealistic expectations, a quid pro quo or transactional thing on your networking, right?
Right. For me, I think it was, again, my father moved to the U.S. when he was my age. And so in his mid-40s, he was the general manager of petrochemical oil plants in Iran. So a very large organization, and he was a senior executive. And he comes to the U.S. Now, he went to high school and college in the U.S. And then returned home. So if you were upper middle class in Iran, they would send your kids abroad for culture and multiple languages, and then you come back and typically find good work. And that was his journey until the war. So he's fluent in English. He has 2 master's degrees, and he had experience managing plants with thousands of employees.
Yeah. By the way, I found most generally that particularly the Iranian culture is completely underachieving. I mean, they don't work hard. They I make fun of because we had Sasan Gadarzi, who's now CEO at Intuit, on the show too, and all of you have this immigrant spirit.
Well, he ended up being a third shift guard. So he has his hat and his silver badge.
Yeah.
And when I'm getting ready to go to school in the morning, he's coming home because he has midnight to 8. And that was his job, my age now. So I imagine if I had to leave the U.S. to go to a different country with different language, different culture, different sports, different food, and I leave as a successful executive, and my next job is midnight to 8, walk around the campus, night guard.
Right.
But smile. We never had conflict at home, didn't fight because of money, even though, again, light switch, affluence, gone, all of that gone.
Yeah.
So that sense of entitlement that you fight against because you recognize the world doesn't owe you anything. You have to, if you want something, you work for it.
Well, also, it sounds like you recognize you knew what your situation was like before, and now you're comparing to what that is now. Then you find this gratitude.
Absolutely. God, you read, again, I mumbo, jumbo, ramble, and you just synthesize it in a tweet. It's amazing. You have great talent. It is. It is. All of that sense of gratitude is, again, and my journey was, from 10 to, teenage years where I didn't have a sense of gratitude. I had a sense of entitlement. I was angry. We lived an incredible life, and when we came here, I lived in an attic, 1-bedroom attic, for 4 years.
Yeah.
So you had that wave.
Well, you were a teenager too. Let's factor that in. Let's filter that. I mean, it's fair.
I really didn't know anything until my 30s, and even that's debatable. But did I hug my dad every morning when I saw him? No. Did I thank him purposefully for doing whatever he could to provide for our family? Now, both mom and dad worked 7 days a week, 2 jobs for 20 plus years. So we had no vacations. It was a struggle, but it was a struggle so that my sister and I could go to a good school, could never feel like we'd want for something that our friends didn't have. And I just didn't have a sense of appreciation. Both of them, knock on wood, they live with me now in my home. So, and they we have dinner every night, and so it's just the greatest gift is I get to spend time with them. And now that I'm a little bit older, I realize what a gift what an immense gift it is to be able to spend time with your parents. And now they get the hugs every day. Mm-hmm. And I try to thank them as much as I can. But I didn't do that. I didn't do that when they were really, going through tough times. So
I think it's hard to do, especially when you're a teenager, or if you're not a teenager and you're very selfish or self-focused. It's hard to see outside of yourself. Yeah. But that's part of the paradox or the irony, right? Like it's that old sort of spiritual thought, which is when you lose yourself, you really find yourself. And I think that just is an experience thing. Sometimes it comes with age, sometimes you learn it early, but it's usually something you don't figure out until you have some sort of hindsight or, runway behind that you can see how far you've come.
I mean, we were just sitting back, chopping it up, reminiscing about the good old days and all that, tracking my roots, where I came from and where I'm going. But like I say, man, always said it, it's not about the destination, it's all about the journey. Ain't nothing changed but the weather. The dangling carrot that hang from the rear view. Your dreams in the past ain't nowhere near you. Backseat drivers got nothing but 2 cents. Shotgun riders too biased, they all liars. I should get an A for effort, I'm too tired. But I'm never giving up, that's why I'm kinda admired. Role model, like it or not, I gotta play.